past. So March 10th, 9th and 10th, coming up in about 3-4 weeks or so, we have Ohio Safety Congress. It is 100% virtual again this year. So registration is open. We want you to register and you can go in. We have a lot of sessions. Last year, I think we only had about 10 sessions. We have about 35 live sessions and I think 11 or 12 virtual sessions that are pre-recorded this year. So lots and lots of options. You can get a lot of credits and a lot of program credits. All of that is still the same as last year, but lots of, kind of new stuff since it is all virtual. Like you said, more sessions, different business tracks or kind of tracks, all the on-demand sessions, the virtual sessions are available until March 31st. So there's that. You can register now. This is just a quick shot of what it looks like when you'll get into the platform. Lots of different places to go, lots of stuff to see. It's kind of new and neat this year. So you'll have this virtual 3D showroom when you started out. So registration, as always, is 100% free. Really exciting topics, really exciting speakers. I have 4 personally that I'm working with that I'm on screen moderating, and I've met with 3 of them over the last day and love them. They're amazing. So we might have to try to steal them for speakers for councils. But that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Lori Goodnight. Lori, if you want to try to share your screen, it should kick me off, but if not, let me know. I can stop sharing, I think. There we go. It let me into the right thing. So Lori's going to talk a little bit about a new, newly open to everybody program that we have here at the Bureau. So go ahead, Lori.
I didn't mute myself. I always forget that. So thank you so much for letting me speak for a few minutes. My name is Lori Goodnight, and I always love coming to the Summit County Safety Council. It's one of my favorites, guys. Enjoy it terribly. I want to speak to you today about a new program, and it is called the Substance Use Recovery Workplace Safety Program. Now, don't let that name scare you because it's really not as bad as it sounds. It's a great program, especially if you're doing drug testing in your workplace. If you're doing drug testing in your workplace, you're going to see that this program pays for a lot of things that you pay out of pocket for, or at least a portion of them. The program, usually when you're in if you're not in BWC's drug-free workplace program because you're a group retro, you can't participate in it. But you can participate in this program. So it's a great opportunity for you. It's an easy reimbursement process and it's an easy re-enrollment process. Let me put that out there just that way. The substance use recovery, as I said, pays for a lot of things that you can get reimbursement for. And they pay for such things as your written policy. We all know we have to have a written policy that's strong and addresses all elements of your drug-free workplace program. We also reimburse for your review of or legal review of your program policy. We all know that we should get our policies reviewed every once in a while, maybe yearly, and this program will help pay for that piece. We will reimburse for employee education and supervisory training, and I know that can be a little bit costly. The train-the-trainer is also covered. So the employee education process, we know that part focuses on employees being educated on your drug-free workplace program and the effects of substance abuse. Your supervisory training needs to equip the supervisor to manage the employer's drug-free workplace program. They need to know how to document and refer an employee, if needed, to available resources. Both of those we will pay quite a substantial amount, if up to what you paid for it. So those are two good items that you can get paid for. We will reimburse for drug testing if you have a second chance agreement in your policy. So I'm going to say that again. We will reimburse for drug testing if you have a second chance agreement in your policy. That includes pre-employment, post-accident, return to work, reasonable suspicion, etc. All of these right now, you can go back to the 2019 policy year and apply for reimbursements through June 30th. So not even for this, just for this current year, but you can go back to 2019 and get them reimbursed. When an employer applies online, you'll get an immediate answer to your eligibility. It's really, really quick. If to be eligible, you have to be a state-funded employer in good standing. And we all know good standing. What that means is that you can't be more than 45 days due on a balance. You have to be current on a payment plan if you're in a payment plan. You have to be an active or reinstated status, and you had to do your true-up. Those that are not qualified, people that don't qualify, are state agencies, self-insuring, clients of self-insured PEOs or AEOs. So most state-funded employers do qualify. And again, it doesn't matter what program you're in, you're going to qualify. So as of December 27th of last year, we opened this up to all counties. So it's statewide. And for Summit County, you will notice that you are in the purple grid, which means you would get reimbursed from the local ADMH board, and ADMH board stands for Alcohol, Drug, Mental Health Board. If you're located in the orange, if we have anybody that's not in Summit County, maybe in Medina in the group right now, you would actually get reimbursed from BWC. Again, if you're a state-funded employer, it doesn't matter what program you're currently in or not, your policy is in good standing, you would be eligible for this program to get help with reimbursement on some of your drug-free program. I want to first thank you. This is just an introduction, and hopefully I'll be invited back maybe to do a full-blown presentation on this program. But I will put in the chat my contact information. So you can contact me after this meeting if you are interested, and I'll be glad to help you through it. Thank you, Stacy and Carrie, for inviting me.
Thank you, Lori. If you want to throw your information in the contact, I see there was already a question for you. So once you stop sharing your screen, you'll be able to see that. And at this time, really excited. I know this is a really good turnout compared to what we've had the last couple of months. So Michael, I think that means they know what a good speaker you are, and they know how exciting and just, invigorating hazard communication is. So at this point, Michael, if you want to share your screen, I'm going to send it over to you. As far as introductions go, really, because his accent is so awesome, you don't need much of an introduction. So you'll see what I mean in just a minute. But Michael is the president of Make Solves, and it is a private consultant company. I believe you guys are in Southern Ohio. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, let you talk a little bit about yourself, and get into some really exciting stuff with hazard communication. So it's all yours. If you guys could give a round of applause. Down at the bottom, you have a reaction button, and you can clap. Go ahead and give a round of applause for Michael as we venture to the excitement of Hazcom. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. And can you hear me? You can.
Yes,
Good.
perfect.
Good. And you can see that. You can see that slide on the screen.
You have done it perfectly. I can't believe that it was your first time.
So you can teach old people new tricks. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Between you and Sally, I have just learned a new thing. Technology is wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Carrie, for sending over that 6-pack of Bud Light. So I'll do this for you, and appreciate that. Again, as she said, my name is Michael Kerr. I own a small consulting firm here in Dayton, Ohio. I have done these presentations for BWC to numerous safety councils. I appreciate it. I guess I must be doing something right because I keep getting asked back. Yeah, I must be doing something right because this is the most boring subject on the planet other than confined space or maybe respiratory protection, or let's find out what's in the first aid box. I don't know, but to me, I've been associated with hazard communication since 1985 when I lived in Richmond, Virginia. I worked with Dr. Jennifer Silk, who was a PhD person at OSHA in Washington, and I, and several others formulated this whole hazard communication concept. Because me personally, where I worked at the time, we saw a lot of people getting injured in the workplace associated with chemicals and not being trained. So, you know, that's where I first got into this. But yeah, I'm retired British Navy, served in the Australian Navy for 3 years, and served with the United States Navy in Southeast Asia for 9 months. Don't let the accent fool you. I am a U.S. citizen, 41 years now as a U.S. citizen. And at least that's what the plaque says on my wall over here. But again, happy to do this, happy to impart some information. The OSHA Hazard Communication Standard, like I said, has been around since 1986. And what I'd like to do here is basically, let's see if we can do this. Here we go. I want to give you some of you may already know about hazard communication. If you do, well, this is going to be boring. You know, go to the bathroom or something like that while I talk about the history. Then I'm going to get into the written hazard communication program, some of the more pertinent elements. I'm going to talk a little tiny bit about training, focus on labeling of containers, chat a little tiny bit about safety data sheets. But I think, you know, then, you know, I'll take some questions if you've got any, provide you a summary of what we've just talked about, because I seem to recall way back in the day, I was told once that I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you what I told you. And I think that's the best way to go with this. So, so let's start with the history of Hazcom. Sad history. I had the book sitting on my shelf over here. You know, Bhopal, India, back in December. You'll recall, if you were around at that time, that we had a chemical plant over there. And unfortunately, in the graveyard shift, one of the employees opened up a valve, drained it into another tank. The two chemicals mixed, and we basically had a terrible toxic cloud leave that chemical manufacturing plant. The temperature was correct, the atmosphere was correct, and unfortunately, the wind direction was in the direction of the town of Bhopal. The cloud of methyl isocyanate dropped down on those people. Some 8,000 were killed immediately, and to date, some 60,000 have died as a result of exposure to that chemical release. That woke a lot of people up back in the day, especially in the United States. But more importantly, I think, was just a year later, in Institute, West Virginia, the same darn thing happened. And that cloud went up the valley, killed a lot of deer and animals, but actually did not kill any human beings. The release wasn't as great, but it was a very similar release. Again, employees not knowing about the hazards associated with the chemicals that they come into contact with on a daily basis. And so it kind of brought to governments around the world, it brought their attention to the fact that chemical usage in the occupational environment warranted an additional priority, if you will, or an additional focus. And in the United States, what we did in 1986, as I referenced earlier, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration published in the Code of Federal Regulations at 29 CFR 1910.1200, the Hazcom standard as it became known. At that time, it was called the Right to Know standard, and was introduced, somewhat embraced. But I recall back in those days that there's still a lot of companies that didn't quite understand what it was all about, even though OSHA at the time provided some information, some guidance documents to transition from a standard into an actual reality in the workplace. But as I mentioned, we're also in a global marketplace. We transfer chemicals all around the world. The United States imports chemicals from all around the world. So the United Nations took what we would classify as a leadership role and took on the whole concept of hazard communication, if you will, of the hazards associated with the chemicals that we come into contact with on a daily basis. As a result of that, a committee was formed, and we came up with it's a long title, I just call it GHS, but it was the Global Harmonization of Chemicals, and we just call it the Global Harmonization System, whereby this the United Nations organized group came up with a standard, a globally recognized, globally adopted, globally instituted standard, a harmonization, if you will, where everyone's on the same page. Every country is looking at this document. Well, they did that, but the United States didn't do it. Because, the United States said, well, you know what, we've got the Hazcom standard, we've got our own standard, and we're good to go. The problem was, from an EPA perspective, from a DOT perspective, especially DOT, where you're transporting chemicals across state lines, where you're transporting chemicals across different countries, to Canada, to Mexico. You're shipping them off to China, to Singapore, to Hong Kong, wherever. Yeah, those foreign folks weren't really in tune with the hazard communication standard in the United States. So lots of people were ticked off about that. OSHA finally realized that they needed to enter the global marketplace with their standard. And so what they did in 2012, what I can only characterize in my lifetime anyway, with any OSHA standard, was the largest revision to any OSHA standard I've ever seen. So in 2012, November of 2012, OSHA revised the standard, and it completely embraced, if you will, global harmonization system at that time. The 2012 GHS, the 2012 OSHA standard adopted revision 3 of the GHS. They went through it legally, reality-wise, and they put it into the occupational environment in the United States. As a caveat to that, let me tell you, it's 2022. This thing has been in place for over 10 years. As a consultant in the safety and health environment, it just amazes me as I look at some of the data, and I'm not going to share any of that with you today, but it just amazes me how many organizations, companies, commercial enterprises, manufacturers are still devoid of any knowledge of this standard, still do not have a Hazcom program in place in their occupational environment. I still see OSHA citing companies for being clueless with respect to this standard 10 years after it was adopted. And even then, those companies that do adopt it, I see so many simple violations of the standard. It is not that hard to understand, and it's not that hard to deploy, and it's not that hard to train your employees. And while I'm not exactly a fan sometimes of OSHA because they go in some directions, with respect to hazard communication, OSHA has done a stellar job of providing guidance to employers and guidance to employees. And I might point out in several languages. So I really strongly urge anyone that doesn't know too much about this, I hope by the end of this presentation, you'll know a little bit about this, that if you need more information, go to the OSHA website, just type in hazard communication in a browser, and you'll gain access to some wonderful tools. Back then in the day, OSHA gave you almost a year to get into compliance with training before they would start issuing citations. So we've had the 2012 standard for 10 years. Last year, in April, I believe it was, April 19th, OSHA put an advance notice of proposed rulemaking out that they were going to go ahead and change some of the aspects of the hazard communication standard. And what were those aspects? Well, as I mentioned earlier, in 2012, they adopted revision 3 of the GHS. Ladies and gentlemen, today, as of 2021, we are in revision 8 of the GHS. So we have some 5 GHS revisions to embrace, to include, to adopt in the new hazard communication standard. So you will see changes, and I'm going to reference some of those changes in the upcoming standard. So that's the history of where we are today. And like I said, they revised it. Why? Harmonized definition of standards, provide specific criteria for labels, and get a standardized, harmonized format for safety data sheets. I remember back in the 80s, used to have a single sheet of paper. Sometimes it had 8 sections, sometimes it had 5, sometimes it was a double-sided sheet of paper that the OMB put out that had enough information on there to make your head spin, but it wasn't good enough. So now we have a harmonized system, okay? And also by adopting this and by embracing the GHS, OSHA reduced confusion and provided enough information so we as employers could comprehend a little tiny bit better the hazards associated with those chemicals that we use, because manufacturers, distributors, and importers had to provide additional information. And also it gave us some advanced information on how to train our employees. And while it is a major aspect, especially when you talk about the global marketplace, it helped address literacy by going to graphical symbols as opposed to a long dissertation. And so now, especially in labels, those employees that have suffer from some form of literacy challenge can just look at a label now and figure out whether it could hurt them. As I said, some of the changes back then and which will be embraced right now, you went from a specification standard to a performance standard. You've gone from hazard classification. Sorry, you've gone to hazard classification rather than just determining what the hazards are. You can now put in a hazard classification a number of chemicals because they exhibit the same kind of a hazard to the employee or to the workplace. The label itself has been redefined, and you now have 5 standard, when I say 5, precautionary statements and pictograms, so you might look at it as 6, but there are now 5 standard requirements, federally mandated, globally mandated components for a safety, for a label. And again, going back to the safety data sheet, we now use a standardized 16-section format. You can't change it. The words that are in there, you can't change that. You can only pull words and put those words into that safety data sheet. So again, no matter who you are, what the chemical is, there are now standards for describing hazard statements, pictograms, precautionary statements, all that kind of information is now mandatory and is found in the GHS. So let's talk about Hazcom program very quickly. What it is, chemical manufacturers and importers, they go ahead and prepare the thing, create a safety data sheet, send it over. when the employer purchases the product. The employer then gets the product with labels and safety data sheets. They write a hazard communication program, and that hazard communication program includes a list of all the hazardous chemicals or substances in the workplace. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Then they implement it. They make sure that in the workplace, all containers are labeled, that safety data sheets are there for every single chemical that they have in the workplace. That question that Carrie posed earlier, what's the most biggest challenge that you have with compliance with the hazard communication standard? It is the number of chemicals. Maintaining a qualified site-specific listing of the chemicals that you have on site. Because if OSHA comes in and you give them a list and they turn around and they find something that they've got there that is not on your list, and maybe you don't have a safety data sheet for it, well, if you've looked at the OSHA website lately and looked at what the penalties are, you'd be impressed with how much you're about ready to pay. So develop a Hazcom program. First, read the standard, write a specific program to your location that has the hazardous chemical list, that discusses how you're going to label product in the workplace, talks about safety data sheets, and comprises what it is that you're going to train employees on, and so they can handle chemical substances appropriately. Your Hazcom program needs to be updated. Do it every year. Check it out. And when we talk about chemicals, hazardous chemicals are everywhere, throughout industry, throughout government. You got them in all kinds of commercial enterprises. So conduct a thorough assessment, create a list, apply some kind of number or batch code to that particular product so you can manage it, and make that list available to employees during their work shift, and go ahead and put it in the master program. But employee training is very, very simple. Training must cover the requirements of the standard, the substances and hazardous chemicals in the workplace, the methods that you can use to detect a release. Oh, look, there's water on the floor, but is it water? Smelling it, seeing vapor coming off of it. Like I said, an odor, or those kinds of ways that you can detect a release. You have to talk to employees about the physical and health hazards of the chemicals, what kind of PPE they need to wear, what you'll see on the label, where are the safety data sheets kept, where's the whole written program kept. That's what the training must cover. So labels, as I said, every single product has to have a label. Every single container must have a label. Now, they are changing the labeling component, or it has been proposed in the revised standard that will be coming out possibly even sometime this year. And it goes to small containers. So if you're a manufacturer of a product that is so darn small, I'll be personal with you. I'm a type 2 diabetes guy. And so once a week, I have to jab myself with a pen. And believe me, the information, if you were to read it, you would not be able to read it if it was required to be on that pen, because it's a small container. No, I've got like a 20-page document that's attached to the pen that tells me all the hazards associated with that particular product. That is now going to be adopted across the board for not only for many small chemicals or small packages, if you will, of chemicals. And this is what it looks like, okay? So you got a signal word over here. There are two signal words, danger and warning. You got hazard statements, which kind of, again, you take them straight from the GHS standard. You'll have precautionary statements. Again, you will take them straight from the GHS standard, as will the hazard pictograms right here. You can't change those. Whatever your chemical is, when you do testing on it and you find out it does this, then you look in the GHS and you pull those words in. You actually give it a name, product identifier. That's the name of the product. Nitric acid, acetic acid, whatever it is. And then obviously supplier identification who made it, where they made it, what's their phone number, postcode, emergency phone number. In the new standard that's coming down the pipe, they're going to address batch labeling of product, because we found it out in the last several years that some chemical products are kept in a storage warehouse or something like that for a long time. And sometimes they may go out of date. So OSHA's going to put in there a date that they were manufactured. It's one of the minor changes that we're going to see. Just to give you an idea of what a label information looks like and where you get it from, this is for acute toxicity. So, okay, the hazard category is 1. If it's oral, the GHS label then is skull and crossbones. For transportation, you'll see that label. The signal word is danger. If it's for oral, then it's fatal if swallowed. That is a mandatory, cannot be changed definition. And it goes to H300. So, and again here, statement codes, the same darn thing. Pictograms, I don't really need to go through every single one of them because we're running out of time here by the looks of it. But pictograms, again, OSHA has a beautiful document that explains every single one of these pictograms. And then you can refer back to the GHS to get some additional insight into that. Some of them, especially like this health hazard pictogram, cover a number of different health hazard categories, if you will. This one right here, aquatic toxicity, is not part of the OSHA standard, will never be embraced by the OSHA standard because it goes to the environment. And so OSHA has not adopted that. Here's some other precautionary pictograms that you'll see. They're pretty self-explanatory. This one down here in the bottom says, Michael, don't drink while you're working. At least that's what I understand it to be. Safety data sheets, again, the most important part of this outside of labels. 16 sections. They will never change, and every single part of this section must be filled out by the manufacturer, the distributor, or the importer, and provided to you on a safety data sheet to protect you and your employees. I will not go through every single one of these sections. I'll just come to the summary that, you know, what we're talking about here is a standard that's been in place for 10 years. It's not that difficult to embrace. It's not that difficult to understand. But you have got to share with your employees everything that you can about the hazardous chemicals or substances that they use in the workplace. Talk about the methods that you use or are implemented to detect a release of a chemical. You know, if there was a 2-gallon jug and now it's only got half a gallon in it, where did the other 1.5 gallons go? Was there a leak? You know, talk about physical and health hazards associated with those particular products. And remember, under the GHS and embraced in the 2012 standard, you can categorize chemicals, you know, 20 chemicals that are flammable. Okay, talk about those 20 chemicals as a whole, not individually. Back in the day, you used to talk about them individually. You don't have to do that anymore. But most importantly, personal protective equipment. What can employees wear to protect themselves from a particular product? Learn the GHS labeling system. It's very, very simple. Wear your safety data sheets and talk to your employees about the plan. Where is it located? Oh, and get this all done by next Monday. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what? They're very serious. I have seen $17,000, $23,000, $5,000 fines issued by the folks down here in the Southwest area director of OSHA. I've stood in there at an informal conference and tried to assuage them from levying such a high penalty. But I hear it all the time. Michael, your client's in the wrong. This has been in place for over 10 years. They have no excuse. And you know what? It's hard to argue that. So with that, Carrie and Sally, appreciate this. I'll hand it over to you guys and you take it from there. How about that? And I
Awesome.
will,
Thank you. Love
I'll
it.
stop sharing my screen. There you go.
All right. Any questions? Does anybody, and feel free to turn your cameras on at this time. Does anybody have questions or any concerns that they have? I will tell you one thing, the Bureau, the BWC has sample written programs. So we have one for hazard communication, and there's a lot of sample written programs out there. So if you are sitting there and you're listening, you're like, oh, crud, I don't have a program for this. Send me an email. I can send you a link to it. How's that drink there, Michael?
As I mentioned at the outset, I'm a retired member of the British Royal Navy. Puss's rum, we used to get this every single day. So today is just another day in my life. So, you guys took half an hour out of my day, but I talked a lot, so I'm thirsty. So you go ahead and talk. I'll answer questions, but meanwhile, I'll just savor a Jamaican Puss's rum. Have a good day.
All right. Anybody have any questions?
I'm kidding.
Okay.
This is iced tea. It's just a wrong label.
You're funny. It's perfect for Hazcom. I did see on the news, it's probably been 2 months ago. It was a restaurant. I can't remember who. I think it was like Cracker Barrel, and they had a case outside of Ohio that just got settled. An employee had put bleach water in one of the pitchers that they normally would put water in, and they were using it for cleaning. They didn't label, and a server grabbed it and actually served it to a customer. And so right there, perfect example, I know, of why labeling is so important. So we do have one question on here, or 2 questions now. So does this need to be done for just regular regular cleaning supplies, in addition to like chemicals used in your process?
Okay, so the answer to that is you have to look at how much of the cleaning chemical do you have in your operation? OSHA has defined that to be a consumer quantity. So if you have a gallon of bleach in your office, Hazcom doesn't apply. If you have a gallon of bleach in your office and 11 other gallons of bleach in your office in a box in a storage closet or the janitor's closet or something like that, Hazcom applies. And why is that? Because you and I as consumers would not have normally, I know I don't have it anyway, would not normally have 11 spare, unless it's the beginning of the pandemic and everyone ran to Costco's and bought 12 gallons of bleach. No, simply stated, look at it from a consumer quantity perspective. 1 gallon of bleach, nothing. If you have a project in your office where you're going to, let's just say, paint a file cabinet, and you go to Lowe's and you purchase 2 cans of spray enamel paint. That's a consumer quantity. But if you go to Lowe's and buy 12 cans, when you really only need 2, but you buy 12 cans to execute that project, that is no longer classified as a consumer quantity. That then trips you into the occupational environment, triggering hazard communication and the dissemination of information regarding that aerosol can, the paint that's in it, and the hazards associated with using it, getting on your skin sensitization, inhaling it, or getting it in your eyes or whatever. That's the differentiator. Use common sense. Consumer quantity, Hazcom doesn't apply. Excessive consumer quantities, it does.
Great answer. We do have another question. Is there a standard label that folks should use as a secondary label or a primary label, honestly?
There is no standard label. However, the federal OSHA standard states clearly that any label in any configuration must contain the 5 primary elements where we talk about hazard statements, hazard precautions, signal word, product identifier, and pictograms. Those 5 elements. There's actually like 6 really, which I explained here. Any configuration, it doesn't matter where they are, as long as they're on the label.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So back to,
if I could, Carrie, you also mentioned secondary labels. Okay. The secondary container or the secondary label must be exactly the same as the primary. There's no differentiating. Back in the day, when we had the NFPA 740 and the HMIS labels, okay, which is still around somewhere, you had a smaller version of those, and they were just basically a snapshot of what was on the safety data sheet. Well, that's gone away. With the embracement of GHS in 2012, that label is mandatory. That label is standard language, which is mandatory.
good answer. Thank you. One more question around the regular cleaning supplies, general stuff. So just to verify this individual, Kathy said that, you know, if we have like 1 bottle of nail polish remover, 1 bottle of Goo Gone, or like 1 container of artificial tears, or, you know, whatever it is, if it's consumer, then we don't have to worry about having the SDS and all the other stuff that goes with it, correct?
That is correct. And, you know, on those lines, I mean, here you go. Okay, what is this? We got whiteout. Okay, fine. I have one of these at home. Do I need to write a Hazcom program at home for whiteout? No. But I'm in an occupational environment, and I have 24 of these. You know, 12 of them are scattered around my employees' offices, conference room, reception. They're all over the place. So this little tiny bottle now becomes a hazardous chemical that needs to be inventoried, and whatever it says on the back here, if you can barely read it, I can't. So you need to have some more information regards to the hazards associated with whiteout in the occupational environment. So to answer your question, what you've just described, if you got onesies and twosies of this stuff, no, not required.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I don't see any other questions. If you do, you still have a couple minutes, go ahead and throw those in the chat, or feel free to unmute and ask your question. I will say, Amy from Akron Sheridan, if you're still here, it looks like you are the winner. It looks like you may not have a camera, but you have a microphone. So you are the winner. Let's see, who was the me of your drink? I don't know. What was the me of your drink? I'm not sure I understand that question, Ashton. But Amy, Sally will get in touch with you and get you your gas card. You are the winner for the random drawing winner for this meeting. Aston, if you want to unmute, what was the name of your drink? Oh, they wanted to know what kind of rum that was. Fake, even though it's iced tea. Okay.
It's Huss's Royal Navy Rum. You can get it at all Ohio liquor stores. And if you come down to Southwest Ohio and you go to the Bag of Nails, I have my own personal bottle behind the counter because they don't inventory it because no one else drinks it except for me.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. All right. Well, I'm going to pull this back up. Guys, just to remember, Next week or next month at our meeting, we're also going to join early and do a little networking and try to get some of that feel of what it was like when we were in person, to do some networking prior to the meeting. So that will start at 11:30. Feel free to jump in there, and then just know we're going to stick you in a chat room and you guys can talk through, you know, whatever the question is. Next month, my favorite with February to March is it's always the same day of the month. So March 16th, we will be talking we're getting close, one of our last topics on the OSHA Top 10. We're going to talk about power industrial trucks, and we have Melissa Fent from Crown Equipment. She's got some really neat stuff that she's going to talk about. So make sure if you have a trainer that does your power industrial trucks, that might be a really good topic that you either have them come or you bring them with you to the virtual meeting, and you can go from there. So with that, that's all I have. If you guys have any questions or concerns, let me know, but let's just give one last round of applause to Michael and all the great information about hazard communication. Look, they're all clapping for you. So good stuff. Awesome. Awesome. Okay.